What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our channel. I'm Grant.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the G Team. This week we're going to be in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 28, just one verse. We're going to pull out 4 points from it, so even though it's one verse, we've got a lot to get out of it, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, like Grant said, Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 28, so I'm just going to go ahead and read. But where are thy gods that thou hast made thee? Let them arise, if they can save thee in the time of thy trouble. For according to the number of thy cities are thy gods, O Judah. Now would be a good time to take the video, pause it, pray, ask God to guide you through this devotion, and pull out what He wants you to see.
So just jumping right in, point number 1 is we need to notice something grammatically here, because grammar is everything. And just to kind of get started, to make a point out of it, there's a shirt out there, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, and it says, "Let's eat grandma," and then it says, "Let's eat grandma." And it says, commas save lives, because grammar means everything. Words are how we communicate. Words is how God communicates to us through His Word. So we have to pay very special attention to the words, to the grammar, because sometimes it can mean something totally different than what we realize. And in this week's devotion, what we're focusing on is the word gods. And you notice that gods is spelled with a lowercase g. And that has all the meaning in the world. And we talk about it a lot, quite honestly. It upsets us when we see people talk about how great God is and all this on Facebook, and it's a lowercase g. Because that's not the God that we serve. The God we serve is at least worthy of a capital G. Because like we said, grammar means everything. So it's important to notice as we jump into this that God's plural is spelled with a little g. So just keep that in mind as we go through this devotion.
Yeah. And just like Grant said, those little g's are often used in everyday life, and people don't realize that they're creating all these little g gods to help them survive in everyday life. But really, when it comes to troubled times, they're not focusing on the big G God who takes care of everything and is in control of your life. Because these little g's, whether that be, you know, like Buddha, the little statues they make, that's a symbol, a little g, and that's not going to help them looking at a tiny little statue of a dog or something like that. When big trouble arises in their life, or when they need God, they need to focus on the big G and that relationship with Him.
Yeah, and moving into our next point, we have to kind of take a look at it, because it's easy to understand gods with a little g as idols and as statues, just like Gabby said, because that's just what we constantly think about when we talk about gods and idols and everything. That's just what pops into your head. That's something that I don't know if it's from where we were younger or that's what we were taught or whatever, but that's just what you think about. But really, these gods with a little g can be anything in your life that comes before you in your relationship with God. And that's what we have to really look at to understand the meaning of why this is so important. These gods with a little g can be anything from sports to relationships to your job. Really, anything could be a god with a little g in your life. Anything that is distracting you, anything that is taking your attention off of God with the big G and putting it on something else, that's classified as a god with a little g. Alright,
so moving on to our next point. If that cut sounded a little funny, Grant got a phone call because he forgot to turn his ringer off. But just moving on, as Grant said, all of these different outlets in life we rely on as little g's and put all of our focus and time into instead of our relationship with God. And when it comes down to what's really important in life, and when something goes wrong in one of those little g situations that distract us from the big G God, then we can't rely on anything, because they're not going to help us in that time of trouble. And one little g that people often think of might be a big G is the president. You know, especially in the world right now, a lot of focus has been put on who the president is going to be and how they're going to change the world. And yes, they have a lot of power on earth, because we give them that power, but they have no help in troubled times. God is the only one that's going to help us.
Yeah, and it's important to realize that the whole point of this that we're talking about is, in our time of need, these gods with a little g that we create are not going to help us. I don't know about you guys, but anytime that someone in our family gets a bad diagnosis or we get bad news, the president's never picked up the phone and called me and said it's going to be okay. I love baseball. I love golf. I love fishing. Anytime someone gets a bad diagnosis, bad news, guess what? They don't comfort me. They don't do anything for me. The only person who can do anything for me in my time of need is God with a big G. And that's the whole point of this that we're trying to get across, is we can create these idols and these gods with little g's in our lives, and we worship them. We devote days, weeks, months of our time to these gods with a little g, and we do it for nothing. We do it for our enjoyment here on earth, because when the time comes and we either meet our Maker, or it comes to where we get bad news or something like that, they're not going to mean anything to us, and we can't take them with us. So that's the main point that we're trying to get across this week, and we hope it was an encouragement to you all, and we thank you guys for supporting us, and hopefully God will allow us to keep on getting these videos out, and we hope they're making a difference in your all's lives, and hopefully we'll be here again next week. So once again, I'm Grant.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the G Team.
And don't forget,
do your best and let God do the rest.